Okay, so welcome everybody. Glad to see you all here today. I'm assuming we're going to have some more people joining us today. We have a lot of things to talk about. And Chris, good morning. Glad to see you're online, and we'll be hearing from you in just a little while.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. If you give me just a second, I'm going to share my screen, and then we will get hopping. Okay. All righty. So welcome everybody. Glad to see you this morning. Glad to be seen too. Anyway, so a couple of housekeeping things, and then we'll get on with the meeting. So next week, our next meetings are the 18th and the 25th. We are not meeting next week, which is Columbus Day. So we're going to take the week off and take care of some other business while we don't have a meeting next Monday. So we generally like to start with any new people who are joining for the first time today. Anybody new today? Going once? Going twice? I take it not. Okay, so next thing, just a reminder that we have started our Kibitzing with colleagues. As you may know, that's a fun opportunity after this meeting. Anybody who wants to stay online, we've been having now 5 to 10 people who participate. It's an informal gathering. There's no agenda, there's no presentations, no ending time, just discussion, sharing, and collaborating. So any of you who choose to join us, we would love to have you. Just a reminder that you can download last week's task force report. Thanks to Oris and Henry for the great work they do in capturing our meetings and getting the report out ASAP. So you guys do a great job. Thank you. You can also download the presentation from Allo Communications, and that is available. And also, if you missed last week's meeting and you want to see what's happening, you can also view the recording. You may see, if you're looking at the meeting page, that I have added a box here as a reminder that we did a comprehensive statewide digital access strategy report, and it is available for download. So if you haven't reviewed that report, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's probably time, and I know Mark, so that you won't tell me that I will try to get the leadership team together, and we need to think about doing some updates. And again, as you know, we've been collaborating with Connect Arizona, being led by the State Library, and have done a great job with their website and interactive map. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that and some other things coming up fairly shortly. And again, I encourage you, although frankly I haven't done a great job, but we do have a events and updates page that I encourage you to visit. You'll find information about most, if not all, the upcoming funding sources that are available, federal, state, and so forth. And I try to keep that fairly up to date. So I really encourage you to visit that page on a fairly regular basis. That link is available on this website and on the meeting webpage. So anyway, that's that. So going on, first of all, once again, thanks to our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, Valley of the Sun United Way, Satellite Broadcasting and Communications Association, and Khajiit. Always looking for new sponsors. So any of you particularly who represent providers and our businesses, we would love to have you be a sponsor of the task force. Let's see, I already talked about that. Also, just a reminder that we do have a participant contacts list, and it is available on this and all of the task force pages, a link to contacts, and you can see who has been participating. It probably needs to be updated. There's some people who have changed jobs, And if you have not, once again, I'm begging you, please complete the Google form and get into that form so that we have information about you, your contact information, and so forth. And so with that, ready to move on. So Robert, are you online? Robert Alvarado? Robert, not here yet, huh? Okay. So let's move on. So exciting thing, Cindy Hogan and Nicole Imayam and I met last week, and we have decided to create a task force digital inclusion team, as well as the Connect Arizona is developing a digital inclusion directory. Cindy and Nicole are going to chair that team. Those of you who are involved with us early on with the task force know that we had 4 teams when we first started that came together, identified needs, and made recommendations that were included in the report that we did. So I'm going to turn this over to Cindy and Nicole to talk about that team, where we think we might be going and so forth. So Cindy and Nicole, you're on.
Nicole, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So really the early purpose of this directory is informational, and that's for the public that we serve, as well as for all of our organizations that are engaged in some type of digital equity work, who might not necessarily be able to connect with this group, or maybe see themselves having a role in broadband deployment, but see a place for themselves in terms of broadband adoption, which includes things like awareness about affordability, as well as digital literacy and digital learning. So we know that there's a lot of organizations in Arizona that are doing this work that might not necessarily know of each other. And we'd like to make a searchable database, essentially, that's you're able to search by, where are the places that are offering free public computers, where are the places that are offering in-person or virtual training. And that way it will essentially set the foundation for a network of those groups if that's deemed appropriate by the, by the participants. We would like to start meeting about every other week to highlight the work that different groups are doing, and to workshop together on some common problems and some issues. And hopefully that can lead to some strong partnerships and collaborations. I'll share an example of the Portland Digital Inclusion Network.
Hey, let me stop sharing so that you can share.
Oh, I was just going to share in the link because it's pretty fun to take a look at on your own. But essentially, it's a database that's a little kind of user-friendly to be able to look for those specific types of services. And of course, it would connect us all together as well. So we think that this is an important resource throughout Arizona to try to connect the different doers on the ground.
Okay. Cindy,
what am I missing?
Cindy, are you there?
Yep, I am. Yeah, no, that was a great summary. And yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of it. I also want to call attention, and I'll put it in the chat, that this is Digital Inclusion Week throughout the country. And I'm going to put a link to the National Digital Inclusion Alliance website, where they have a page and they have 85 different events going on across the country. They're listed there. They're not all, not many of them were Zoom events as I could tell, but just to give an idea of what communities are starting to come alive and bring digital inclusion into the public sphere. So I'll put that in the chat.
Cindy, Cindy or Nicole, do you want to just talk a little bit about the conversation we had the other day about creating a team under the task force? Apparently not.
I think she already mentioned it, Steve. Yeah. She said they're going to meet every other week. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. So if you're interested in participating, 2 things. I will send out a separate email with the link to be able to provide your information for the digital inclusion directory. And then we'll also send you some information if you are interested in participating on that team, that you can sign up for that also. I also, if you were on the or can see the web page for the meeting, I have included Cindy and Nicole's emails, and you're more than welcome and encourage you to contact them and let them know about your interest or any questions you have. Any questions about that? Okay, Robert Alvarado, are you online yet? Okay, we'll come back to him a little later, hopefully. Mala and Janet Major. Janet, I don't know if you're online, but Mala, I think you are. Do you have anything more to talk about regarding telehealth and libraries?
Not yet, Steve. We had our first meeting with the Pima County Public Library that is going to pilot the project, but we haven't gotten further from that because any further on that project yet, except for some data gathering on my part. I'm waiting for the players to be back from their vacation, which they will be this week. Sorry, and I had meetings with the Indian Health Services in the meanwhile, and I'm finalizing what kind of projects they would be interested in the south of Arizona, because we're looking mostly to do this in the south of Arizona.
Okay.
And I have NAU that is interested in doing it in Apache County, as well as in Navajo County and in the Navajo Nation area. They have their team ready to go, but we have to still get our libraries in those areas interested.
Okay. So Mal, is there anything you need to help support making this happen?
Oh, yes, of course. We are a part of the team, and we are certainly going to put in a lot of effort from the state library, including funding it through our LSTA grant. We are planning on getting together digital kits. Sorry, not digital, health kits, which would be in a backpack with, a stethoscope, weigh scale, glucometer, blood pressure cuff, and it's a little bit more stuff like the iPads that would have HIPAA protected software to record the data and transmit it to a safe portal for the doctors to view. So all of that is being considered, not only to work within the library where there is, but if there is no space within the library, then to pitch a tent outside and work with an antenna in that tent or on the tent to help with the internet access. So there is a lot that's going on in that area. We have got the outline of a project ready, but we haven't worked on the logistics and details.
Okay. Any questions for Mala? Going once, going twice. If not, let's move on to our updates. Jeff, I'm assuming that when you do your update, you're going to talk about HB 2596 that was just signed by the governor.
Are you talking about the HB 2596 regarding the highways?
Yes.
Yeah, we're actually in the rulemaking process so that where folks can actually offer comment on that. And that'll go on, I believe it's up until the end of the year, if I remember correctly. The folks at ADOT, it was their bill, so they're sort of the ones running the whole thing, are definitely working on that.
Jeff, can you explain what that bill is?
Basically what it does is it opens up our interstate and state highways to broadband development and provides some structure around that. Probably closest analogy I could make is when we opened up broadband development across state land. We ended up coming up with a very defined process that seems to be working pretty well. The rulemaking process, and I'm not the legislative guy, but my understanding is that it gives the general public an opportunity to comment on this. And and again, to come up with a structure that the goal is to open up these pathways throughout our state for broadband, but to do it in such a way that every time we decide we want to go up to Flagstaff, we're not sitting in bumper to bumper traffic because somebody's doing construction. It's not a dig once policy by definition, but obviously we want to make sure that we're doing this in such a way that we're not continuously tearing up our highways for the same thing. So I can probably find a link. I'm sure Mark probably has a link to the comment stuff somewhere, and you're more than welcome to comment on the process.
Yeah. I also put a link on the meeting webpage to HB 2596 if you're interested. So that bill also creates a smart highway trust fund. Can you talk about that a little bit, Jeff?
There's a lot of money flowing into the state government right now, and there's a lot of decisions being made about that. You're probably most familiar with what happened last week. The Treasury released the guidance on the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, which is $190 million, 190, 220, and $2. And obviously, a big chunk of that is going to be looked at with our highways and how we utilize state broadband on the highways. We're very much in the early processes of looking at that. So no definite answers on that yet, Steve. But my expectation is that we'll probably see an expansion of the existing program we have on I-17 and I-19.
Okay. Any other updates, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most relevant to this group, obviously our grant, we're looking at 11/1 is the release date. That's something that's been dictated from on high, so we're gonna have to go with that. Unfortunately, I was hoping we'd get it out this month, but we're gonna have to delay. A little bit of internal announcement, if you aren't aware, Ben Blink has resigned from the governor's office. Last Thursday was Ben's last day. He's moving on to do something in the private sector and will no longer be with us. As part of that, working with the governor's what's called the OSPB, which are the budget folks over there. I'm going to be much more involved with the Treasury funding, among other things, as we work to replace Ben at some point. He's been an amazing partner for us from the governor's office, and believe me, he'll be missed on my end. Another thing that we should talk about, and this is something I need to talk to the state library folks and others, it looks like we are going to take a hard look at coming up with a state broadband map. One of the functions of the Treasury funds is we're able to use some of that funding for that. I had a meeting with state land last week, and we're going to start to put together a group to do that around two different options, at least initially what we've talked about, which is an internal map for government use, and then a public facing map on a website that different folks and others can use. For those of you who've been involved with mapping at all, it's one of those processes that never seems to quite get right. But from our perspective, we're going to try to give it our best shot. There's been some good work done in the past. What we like to do is have a centralized state level resource that we can all access. And I'm going to work really hard to see what we can do to make that happen.
And Jeff, this is Leah. If we can be helpful to the Arizona Corporation Commission at all, please let me know.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, you guys have been great. It was the first meeting. State land has some really unique GIS resources and access to this. There's a lot to be done, and there's a lot of different agencies within the state. They're going to play an important role in this. I mentioned the state library. ADOT's going to play an important role as well. And from our perspective, what we want to do is come up with something that we can all be proud of that'll live on beyond past all of us.
And Jeff,
Go ahead, Mark.
this is Mark. So of course, was involved in the mapping in the earlier generation, and Arizona was probably one of the top 5 efforts in the country. Just two things. Do you know when the newer, more granular 477 data might be available? That's, one tangible improvement will be the granularity and reporting requirements of that new 477 data.
I don't know for sure, Mark. I've heard different things. I think we both know that the 477 data has not been great in the past. We're also going to take a look at working directly with UCLA and some of the speed test
Great.
data that we're getting to make sure that we can drill down. I was very impressed with their presentation about a month ago. Mark, I'd love to have you involved in this if you're willing to take on one more thing, because again, your sense of history and having been through this before is invaluable. What we want to do is we want to make something that's useful. I think a lot of the maps, particularly at the federal level, the NBAM is probably the best example. In many cases are too technical for the average user. We want to make sure that this is something that's used. So if you're up for it, I'd love to keep you involved as an advisor, if nothing else.
Sure, love to. And I saw Nicole, posted in the chat about the community anchor institutions. That remains the biggest failing of the federal mapping, is that all the work we did and the mapping we did had in Arizona 10,400 community anchor institutions across the 7 categories. And I still have that spreadsheet with deeper data available on beyond even what they required back in the day. But the missing of community anchor institutions when you're mapping is really a terrible shortcoming in not being able to see the institutions that you want to serve when you're looking at everything else. So hopefully we'll figure out how to refresh our holdings on community anchor institutions and incorporate them.
So,
Yeah, Mark,
Jeff and Mark, I thought there was one of the federal agencies was also taking on a new mapping initiative. You know anything about that?
Well, NTA released a public version of what had been a private state map that does bring back a lot of demographics and speed testing to the public facing version. And so I don't know if it's that you're referring to. That is a significant improvement. I now do use that map in preference to the traditional FCC broadband map. But Jeff, is there another mapping effort that I'm missing?
No, I think what you're referring to is correct. The NBAM was the federal map that we spent some money and we were a part of. There's a public-facing version of the NBAM. I can post the link. I'll have to look it up, but it is probably the best thing out there today. That being said, there's still a lot that we need to do. Community anchor institutions, Mark, is probably the best example. I had a call last week with folks who are involved with our junior colleges, for example, just trying to understand the different levels of need. And for example, Cochise College in Douglas is probably the best example. And there isn't a central database for that. So I love the idea of incorporating that into what we're doing. I know I've had this discussion with Lev and others in the past, so we will definitely look at that.
So Jeff, what's the latest on the release of the state plan?
We're going to have the information back from KPMG on the 15th of this month, and we're trying to coordinate the release of that with the release of the grant at the beginning of November.
Okay. Any questions for Jeff before we move on? If not, Mala, you're up, and I don't know, Holly, if you're online. So Mala, you want to kick it off, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, starting off with the E-rate, the docket, the FCC docket closed last week, and the two main comments, there were several, but the two main comments that came from several people was Wi-Fi on school buses and cybersecurity. I think hopefully FCC will pay attention and make sure that in the rulemaking, those are added as eligible services for next year. There's been a lot of hue and cry about the Wi-Fi on buses lately, school buses lately, and hopefully they already have Wi-Fi in several school buses, but they're not eligible for E-rate reimbursements. So hopefully they make it eligible for E-rate reimbursements. And the same with cybersecurity. Several libraries and schools already have in place what they need to protect their networks. But again, they have to cost allocate it out when they are applying for E-rate reimbursements. So hopefully this will draw attention, that those are key and important. Otherwise, the current eligible services list will continue as it is. Regarding emergency broadband benefits, there was some confusion in the last week and actually last 10 days on how they counted the households, and they revised the list. So while Arizona has 20,000 fewer households that are on the list currently, almost everyone has the same kind of numbers. I don't know what they excluded or included to make it make those numbers what they are now. But we moved up to 8th in the number of households recruited nationwide. So we're still holding our place among the top 10, top 15 as we were from the start of the program. The amount of appropriations available for disbursement is still $2.5 million. So we can continue, billion, sorry, with a B. We can still continue our promotion as much as we can and push it out to as many households. The good thing is that the money will not go away because the year ends. It will still continue until there is no money left. So that is the good news. But it's also good that we get a chance to promote to households that haven't been a part of the program yet. Regarding ECF, we have the second wave, second ECF grant opened up, and the deadline is October 13th to close that, and trying to push as many schools and libraries to make their applications. In the second wave, those that applied late the first time will automatically be considered for the second wave, second application cycle. And hopefully we will have a few more new ones that apply. The big event that happened last week was the National Tribal Broadband Summit. October 1st was the last of 3 consecutive Friday sessions. Henry was there, Nicole was there, at least among the people that I noticed, and so was Janet Major, and I know Holly attended a couple of them, or at least the middle one that I know, the second one. It was really interesting. There were a lot of sessions on different activities, the tribal broadband connectivity, on planning long-term success, technical solutions for middle mile. There was one session on health, telehealth, a session on broadband use and adoption. So kind of, I think we split up and attended different sessions. The sessions that I attended was on the middle mile project. One was particularly interesting, the Makka middle mile, where the police chief, Brunner, who spoke about wearing multiple hats, trying to corral their community to apply, trying to get the funding for it, trying to get to learn the technology that goes through. And then he realized that there's no one single solution. And it is very encouraging that many of us are in similar situations. And he succeeded, but it took him almost 3 years to get from the idea phase to finally having their middle mile put down in Makka country. We had Navajo Nation, an update from Fred Brakeman. He said 35 of the sites were within a mile of getting the last mile connection to the chapter houses. They were having permitting process, the shutdown in Navajo Nation affected the timeline. And so they're working on SIPA filtering. That is also taking a while to get all their ducks in a row. He said that there were about between 6 months to 2 years away from finishing the entire project. The state library will train the staff that they designate to help with the digital resources. They opted out of having us give them books for their chapter houses. They mainly wanted computers and the digital resources. So that's what we are working on for training. And hopefully as soon as they have connectivity, at least in these 35 sites, we will go ahead with the training of staff that they designate. The last couple of sessions that I attended, one was on telehealth, and I will put this link in the chat. They have a lot of resources on indiancountryeco.org, all one word, indiancountryeco.org. And the Indian Health Services has a lot of resources there that could be used. They are very, very interested and very aware of the need in Indian country, wherever they are, of telehealth and the toll that the pandemic has taken on their community. Anywhere, not just in Navajo Nation, but everywhere, it has taken a toll on the Indian community. There was a session on the Rural Utility Service, RUS, a department of USDA, that talked about funding for water, power, sewage, and now telecommunications. And they have telecommunication programs that they are supporting on construction, on expansion, on upgrades. And they don't do connectivity to the individuals, but to institutions. And they do middle level programs, building networks out, and they do really high level programs that take maybe years to complete, but those are mainly done with the service providers. So they talked about how they gave hints and what they call pro tips on how to apply for these grants, trying to focus on underserved or unserved areas, leveraging other grants, community involvement, collaboration, attend the webinars that they provide. All are kind of the tips that they gave when applying for a grant, and to try and use grant writers who know how the NTIA and USDA work, because grants for those are kind of a different animal compared to doing any other community grants. And the last program that I attended was ASU's American Indian Policy Institute did a capstone project, and their project actually compared several Indian communities, the Garrett County, Rico Blanco, and several other communities, on how they did their projects, their middle mile and last mile connectivity projects for broadband. And each one of them, while they were different, they still had a lot of similarities that they could, that we could learn lessons from. I put the link to the National Tribal Broadband Summit in my notes so that you can actually see it on YouTube when you have the time. It's going to be on the BIA YouTube channel. Back to you, Steve, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mala? Okay, moving on. Janet, I didn't see Janet. Are you online? Don't think so. Sophia, are you online? I know Mylan, you're here.
I'm here. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Sophia. So I know we're going to hear from Chris Richardson very shortly, but in the meantime, do you have anything else? And Mylan, you have anything that you want to add?
I'll cede my time to Chris, but Mylan can share an update if he has one.
Okay.
Hey guys, good seeing everyone. No, I really don't have anything today. We have the second ECF window is open, and we're filing applications and answering lots of questions. And the biggest change between this window and the last one is the FCC came out and said that the maximum per device was $400. Midway through the last window, they came back and said, well, it's now $400 plus tax. So they made that change. So that's the big change that everyone's adjusting to. And now we have to file appeals in order to get the $400 plus tax added back into those submissions. But that's really the only thing happening at the moment. So that's it for me.
Okay, any questions for Sophia or Mylon? Okay, moving on. Leah had to drop off, Leah Marquez Peterson. So she did put into the chat. Let's see what she said here. Oh, here we go. She just said that they have an APS rate case today. If you're a customer, we're taking public comment today and details at azcc.gov. That's the only thing she had to say today. Sorry, we missed her. And Derek, I didn't see you online today. Derek, are you here? Okay. Hey, Mylon, do you have anything more that you want to say about the Final Mile project and where they are?
Yeah, we've got our project meetings are on Tuesdays. If anyone would like an invite to the project status updates, shoot me an email and I'll send you an invite. All of my project meetings are on Tuesdays. So if any of the broadband projects you'd like to be a part of, listen in, see what the status is of anything that's going on, shoot me an email and I'll send you an invite to that project or all of them. There's nothing secret. Everything's out in the open. So if anybody wants to see what's going on, let me know. For the Final Mile, we have a board meeting scheduled this week, and we'll be looking at the next group of sites that we'll be putting RFPs out for. So hopefully next week, we'll be announcing the next group of sites and the RFP dates for those sites.
Okay. Any questions for Mylon? If not, we're ready to move on to our presentation for today. I'm pleased to welcome Chris Richardson. Chris, I'm going to stop sharing and so that you can go ahead and share your deck. But we're glad to have Chris join us today. Chris is the acting CIO for the Department of Ed. And Chris, your full-time is at ASU is, what's your title?
Yeah, so thanks. I'm a deputy CIO at ASU. I've been leading product development and, product management and leadership development there. And before that, I led the in the engineering team from what we built, all of our enterprise systems.
He's done lots of great stuff and involves a lot with IoT and so forth. So anyway, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you and you're on.
Sure. Actually, my colleague, Karina Jones, has joined me as well. She's leading a key part of this and will actually run the office after I've left ADE. So I'm actually on loan. Arizona State University is very unique. Part of our charter is we serve the broader community, and there were some unique things that happened in ADE, and so they worked out an agreement, and I am there through an ISA through the end of the year. So I know many of you through my ASU hat. Great to see you here with this Department of Education hat. It's been a great ride. And just as an FYI, if any of you know a great CIO candidate, the link has been published, and we're starting to get resumes now. So would love you to forward that or let me know of anyone with interest. So this Office of Digital Teaching and Learning is really interesting. We're very excited at ADE. In fact, if you go to the next slide, the superintendent has us on a roadshow. We're literally engaging every county superintendent across the state and in a number of subgroups and building support for this. This started actually with a tech task force that was spun up back in midway through the pandemic, about July. And there was about 26 to 30 folks across K-12 IT leadership, across K-12 county leadership, and influencers of IT, influencers of K-12, as well as a number of tech advisors from outside in industry. And one of the big things is they said, look, ADE can take a leadership role and really help support K-12 across the state. And that's what this is. So if you go to the next slide, I think the key piece is that we did respond, and this Office of Digital Teaching and Learning is the Department of Education's response to that task force recommendations. And it's really welcomed by K-12 around the state that it's a consultative role. We're not developing things that we're then going to mandate. There's a lot of local autonomy in how K-12 runs. We're going to respect that, but we're going to find the best practices and really help bring those to the surface. So this, we'll dig into some details. Feel free, throw in your questions in the chat throughout. We'll kind of weave in answers as we go. But Karina, let's jump in. So we did want to be bold and audacious. We purposely reached out in a forward goal. This isn't something that we're, madly rushing through to collect data and then just focus in 2022. We plan to continue this new office for years to come, and we're working on preparing the legislature, or at least the governor's office, for funding, not in this cycle, but the next cycle. You saw before that there were estimated about 200,000 homes with school-age children didn't have broadband during the pandemic, or still don't. I know things like Final Mile Project and a lot of the work Mylan's doing to help LEAs raise funds from the federal funds opportunity is having some traction, but there's still a lot of work to do. So we're hoping to bring that 200,000 of our 1.1 million students up much closer to 100%, so 95% 2025. And we want something as simple as that every school feel like they got something of value from this office. And that could be, as we plan to provide website information where they can get skills for teachers to use new tools, and or even parents to support it in the home. So it could be as simple as that to serve the 100% side. We do feel that bridging the Arizona K-12 community is really important, connecting them both literally with the best ideas, as well as obviously the connectivity of infrastructure that brings in new capabilities that ultimately leads to success. Those are kind of the three pillars of our mission here. So that's kind of the why. If we jump in the next slide. Now, this is not meant to be prescriptive of where we're going to focus. It's not meant to be comprehensive either. It's just meant to show that we're thinking big. And these can be along the lines of the great work Mylan's already done for years. E-rate has been very successful. It's been a very similar program, very, very tied to federal requirements. Who knows, maybe there's a way to relook at E-rate and get even more scale than we have, augment the architecture, so things like that. But again, the rest there, like what's the security posture? How do we help schools get security at a cost-effective manner? How do we even bring in the best productivity tools? How do we make schools interoperate with each other better, interoperate with the Department of Education better, serve teachers more effectively? We've talked about the home for quite some time in making sure that there's the connectivity there. But once they're connected, how are they still going to pay for it? How is it secure? Does that bring in a new vector of risk to the schools that are delivering or students using from their network? So there'll be a lot at the home level. And then classroom, that's still lots of opportunity. Do they have the right tools in the classroom? Do they have the right learning management, student systems? How do we help get more scale for what's there? I know the superintendent took a group to Arizona State University's Dreamscape, which is an immersive extended reality experience that basically teaches through playing a virtual reality video game. It's amazing. You get course credit through this. Well, how do we make that available through the cloud to the schools? That needs new architecture too. So there's a lot there. And then of course, underlying all of this is, do we have the skills for the teachers, the students to use it in the classroom, the parents to support it at home, and for the IT teams to support it so that it works and it's working as expected. So next slide. Here's where Department of Education will actually play. I'll kind of start from the inside out, and there is an asterisk on the service side. I'll come back to that at the last part, but we do believe it's the bridging of the best practices. So it's community of practice to be really key. Just like you all have this community of practice around this focus that's now found all these work groups. I think it's very analogous to what we want to do for Arizona K-12 education. So we know local education agencies, they have, they gather in certain places already, so we can go to those, but we can also bring them at scale and communicate on a regular basis, find the best stories, take those, showcase them, create the how they did it, and then that gives people inspiration to do the same. And that's a great model. We've seen it in other Arizona-led initiatives, and we think it will work for K-12 too. Once we have that community practice on the far left, Mylan's done an amazing job of helping LEAs respond to federal funds, helping them use the E-rate funds. We think we can do the same sort of thing on an even broader scale if we invest some resources to do supportive of grants, supportive of even broader federal funds. In case they're in matter of fact, there's data that shows if we can come with a coordinated response, we even have a higher likelihood to get more funds for more reach, because not only do we get a number of smaller submissions, how we've been doing it today, if we get big, large ones, we now have the program to make sure the money goes to where it needs to get to, and then effectively gets implemented. And that's powerful for groups like the NSF and other agencies. We've also talked to groups like Department of Homeland Security, ADOA. There's possibility of leveraging some of their contracts and allow that to K-12 schools to get even more scale, bring the cost down for Arizona in what's happening with IT. So a lot of excitement there. I've talked about skills quite a few times. We'll be producing websites to have a great way to go to share what's happening, and we'll find out the things that are necessary. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, which we'll dig into quite a bit, and that'll be Karina's part. She's leading our assessment, our opportunity assessment process, but all of this will be data driven on where we focus. That leads me to the last one, service channel. The reason why there's an asterisk is we've not funded this yet. We don't exactly know where we might apply common services. It's not necessarily ADE, build out the resources to supply the common services, but we might find a way to solve whatever it is. We know that security for K-12 is not at a level that even some of our state agencies are, and they're not even necessarily at a level where some of the private sector is. And so we just know there's a big opportunity. It's hard to get great labor for security and keep them, and or support for that matter. We've already heard some districts, especially those that are border California, if they get a great IT service or desktop person, they lose them because they can either commute or work remote and get California wages. And so they're finding creative solutions. So we believe this one will grow over time. The LEAs have had a lot of autonomy, but they know that they can't keep doing things the same way. So we'll keep that in the back of our minds, because I think there's a way we can scale IT services, and we're excited for that. Next slide. Again, a reminder, I'm seeing any questions here, so I'll just keep powering through. Don't worry, it won't bother me. I can see the questions if you have them. So I'm gonna turn it over to Karina. She's a director of IT communications and strategy here in ADE, and part of the IT leadership team. Thanks, Karina. Karina, if you're there, you're on mute. I know she's sharing the screen, so y'all can hear me. Oh, there she is.
Sorry about that. I couldn't find the unmute option.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yes, and thank you, Chris. And what we are going to show right now is the very first milestone in our moving towards this effort of digital teaching and learning for the state. So what we want to accomplish is what is best than getting data and understanding where the needs are out there in our LEAs and our community. So what this is an opportunities assessment. We are planning to release it's nothing else than a survey, but I rather call it an instrument that is going to let us assess where we are in different aspects of digital teaching and learning in Arizona. Our metrics of success is to make sure that there is a high percentage of LEAs that are ready for digital teaching and learning. And we see ready with a quote unquote, because we believe that readiness is not a yes or no answer. It's not a prescriptive answer of yes, you are ready. It's rather a spectrum of readiness, and it's based on different targets that LEAs may have. So what we have on the right is a set of segments or questions that are composed in different topics. So we want to assess, first of all, the foundations. That is the very basics of devices that are available at the school level, devices that are provided or not to students, connectivity that we have at the school, and connectivity that exists or not at the households or the homes of our students and teachers, and systems that are available, LMSs, do they have LMSs in place, any other applications in place? So those are the basics to ensure that schools can operate in digital teaching and learning. The second one is the structures, to understand policies and procedures around the existing technology, and whether there is a high level of adoption of such policies and procedures. So it's not only about having the technology in place and devices, but also having policies and procedures that will sustain them and will take care of the assets invested. The next one is holding it together with training, skills, relationship, and support, having the support network, relationships between teachers and students, teachers and households. Do we have a counseling system in place? Do we have an IT support system that's so important to continue to support technology? Then, as Chris was mentioning, the classrooms continue to evolve and grow now that we are dealing with more of a hybrid learning modality. So how are we optimizing and innovating in our classrooms? And the final one is understanding how our LEAs continue to improve on digital teaching and learning. Do we have strategies for growth? Do we continue to evaluate our programs? And after everything, how are we measuring student success to make sure that students are successful regardless of their learning modality, regardless of whether they are at home, they are at school, they are hybrid? How are we making sure that they succeed? That is the opportunities assessments for LEAs. Another one that we are considering, and most likely will not be on this first phase, is to bring this assessment to understand households as well, so that we partner with LEAs, so that LEAs have the right tools to gather data from their families and understand the same concept as the previous one. The foundations, do families have devices and connectivity? Do they know the policies and procedures? Do they have the training, skills, relationships? And how are we succeeding overall partnering schools and families working on student success? So this one, again, is one that we are not releasing right away, but it's something that we are considering how to help LEAs with the necessary tools and set of questions so that they can gather this data from their households. After all, what we want is to make sure that we bridge that divide, and we have we work on those over 200,000 students that right now do not have connectivity and devices at home. So we would like to see how this number keeps decreasing and get data over time to make sure that we are moving the needle. This is, as we are putting together this survey or this instrument, we are partnering with LEAs to do that. So we have put together an assessment board. And right now, these are the members of the board, but this is still open for submissions. If anybody else is interested in joining our board or have any recommendations of who else could be part of this board, the idea of the board is to have a group of consultancy key partners who can provide us coaching on as we are developing the assessment and check the questions, provide feedback on the questions, and even conduct a little pilot to make sure that before we release the assessment, that it is comprehensive enough and that it will meet the needs of our LEAs. So these are the board, the members of the board that we have so far. But again, please feel free to send us an email if you have anyone else that can be added to this. And this one is the roadmap of what's coming next. So as we were talking about the opportunities assessment, this is the very first milestone. Our goal is to have data gathered from this survey by December, before the holidays, right? So the plan is to release this assessment by the end of October, first weeks of November, and request data to be back by the first weeks of December. In January, after we gather all of this data, we will be analyzing the data, synthesizing it, and that will allow us to have a published strategy that with the commitment from Arizona Department of Education on how to support and serve in this consultancy role to our LEAs. So that strategy will be published in February. After that, our work continues, right? So there's more work on E-rate utilization, continuing to build on the work that Mylan has already been doing. More work on contracts, again, continuing to expand on the work that Mylan is doing at a different scope now. And the rest of the milestones are our ongoing work as we continue to work on connectivity at home, communities of practices, partnerships, and classroom innovation. All of this is never-ending work, and we hope to sustain it for several years until we achieve the intended goals. Grace, do you want to take it back here?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the superintendent is very engaged. She quickly gravitated to what Karina and I put together, working with Sophia and Mylan and a few of our folks in communications and policy. And now we're doing a roadshow. You can see we've already covered many of the counties. They're all scheduled, and many of the influencing groups that also support school and K-12. So we're working on building out kind of our network, getting the exposure out there, so that when the time has come to get the data from the survey for the opportunity assessment, that there's support for that. Again, we know this is ongoing. We see that this will be something that happens at some regular intervals, so we can kind of keep the baseline moving and turn the survey into a tool that actually guides and informs where K-12 invests and works their strategic plan. Go to the next slide. I also think it's important we share that this isn't us investing in super technical resources to build services to deliver. This is us investing in the support services to be consultative and literally deliver what we share in this office. Is that it's the group to build the community of practice, the group to find the best stories, the group that can then amplify those successes in other parts of the state, and the group that can help support the pursuit of funds and creative solutions to go do that. So we've got fingers crossed for Karina. I think we've got an offer going out soon for a project manager. We've got postings for a communications manager and a data manager. And then we'll be kind of looking to see, based on the early assessment results, where we want to focus with contractor and or grant management and in the financial support of that. So really excited. We're building up a team to do this and getting great results. And then the last slide is just a reminder of what we're asking of when we engage the counties, is just to be prepared. This is coming. Give us the support if they have people they want us to work with directly to introduce that to Karina and I, which are contact information on the next slide. Let them know that there's resources available from ADE along the lines of these programs, and that, can you go back, please? And the federal funding potentiality, and then finally, that we really are excited, and hopefully they're excited, that if we get great data, that helps guide where we're going to put our resources, that then get more of what we want to see for Arizona's K-12 schools in technology. And with that, again, I got a couple direct messages from folks. I really appreciate that, some interest, but are there any questions as Karina and I wrap this up?
This is Joy Whiting from Apache County.
Hey,
I really appreciate your presentation. I actually have a lot of questions. Are you able to stay on AFER in the kibitz?
I unfortunately am not, nor is Karina. We have our leadership team that we're already late for, but we can schedule some time. You can reach out and we can follow up, but happy to engage. High level questions now. We can go till the end of the time schedule.
So you said that it's important to gather the data. How do you propose that the data, is it going directly to the LEAs or is it coming through the county school superintendents? How are you gathering the data?
Well, we're for the places we get working members of our assessment board, they'll know best how to navigate their schools, districts, or county, hopefully. We still plan to send it to the people that we're getting introduced to at a high level. So it's going to be a working process. It's not exactly clear who's going to know how to get it out to the right groups early, but we're learning that through these discussions. And our goal is just to get a good subsection of what's there. And if we have some gaps, we'll fall in. Do you have any suggestions? I mean, happy to get ideas.
Well, just exactly kind of what happened with the EBB program with this group. If data is going out to be collected in a survey electronically, I mean, and I work directly with Apache County, and the connectivity at home, if the modality of gathering a survey is an online survey, but they don't have connectivity at home,
right,
there's a huge problem with that.
Yeah, so I see where you're going. The
In general, I know when schools, because I used to work in a school, when you send papers home, you just don't get a high response. At least you're in session right now. Most schools are in session, so that will help. But again,
we don't have high aspirations for the household survey at this time. We're getting a lot of similar feedback, and so we're likely going to do some where the district themselves can do some general qualitative understanding of where the households are at, until we can find the way to build it into systems that work within the existing processes, like onboarding of new parents and students and or use of their tools. But I see where you're going. The household part, we have the least confidence that this first round will give us great data. We're really trying to get the school level data, because we already know that the broadband piece, they can kind of piece together where their gaps are at the homes. We've had some good discussions with folks around that.
Yeah, Chris, and this first round, we are not planning to release any survey for the households. It's going to be only for LEAs for the first round. Yeah.
so you're expecting to contact each principal or each school superintendent for a survey?
Each superintendent to serve as the champion to gather data from their corresponding principals and schools.
But they're already giving us designees. Many of the counties that we've talked to are giving us designees to either serve on the board and or to be the conduit for administering the survey within that county or district.
So Chris, this is Steve. So you and I, of course, met, I guess it was last week, and had a fairly lengthy conversation about a number of things, but just a couple of quick things. So you heard earlier that we're going to develop a digital inclusion team under the task force. And we have just within the task force alone, probably 40 or 50 digital inclusion organizations. And of course, we're not focused just on education, but on community needs. We've talked about seniors and other community resource needs and so forth. And so what exactly that team is going to look like is still to be determined, but certainly I think there's a potential for some real partnership here with the Department of Education. Of course, Mylan has been engaged with us, as has Sophia, but as we move ahead with that digital inclusion, it certainly seems that we have mutual interest there. So,
yeah, thanks for, it sounds like an opportunity, is kind of an invitation. I think Karina would be a great member to be ongoing, considering my stay is through the end of December, but who knows what happens. ASU gets involved in a lot of these things, and so there may be a way for me to stay engaged at some point, but I think Karina would be the perfect conduit for that.
well, and ASU is already engaged with the
right.
Lighting Up the Future, so there's certainly that synergy also.
Yep.
So the second thing is that we chatted a little bit about was the cybersecurity. And again, it's not, our interest is beyond just the education space. But there is that interest in cybersecurity and what that looks like. And I know you and I chatted that, the school districts have a lot of autonomy. And we certainly are not interested in dictating to anybody about anything, but how we can be a resource and bring some folks to the table. I've chatted some with some folks from Pima College and some others about wanting to help and to get involved in cybersecurity in some way, shape, or form. So we can continue to have that dialogue also.
I have one more question on that, Steve. In your conversations, are you talking to any local carriers in any of these counties about partnering with them about how to proceed with some of these goals the ADE has? Or is this strictly with other institutions?
Was that to me or to Chris?
Either.
Is that Joy?
Yes,
speaking?
sir.
Okay.
Well, I can only comment on some of our thoughts that we have over time have had presentations from a number of carriers, and a lot of those carriers, besides providing connectivity solutions, but also are engaged in digital inclusion in some way, shape, or form. So bringing them into the discussion because they bring resources and are already doing some digital inclusion things in some of their communities. And so bringing them into the process, in my opinion, is very important. So besides a lot of the nonprofit groups, for example, or government groups that are out there, that there are providers that need to be a part of that process.
And I can, like I don't know what Steve and who they may be engaging, other than he said he's building community around this. We can definitely represent the K-12 needs. And then when we have data from our surveys, that actually clarifies well. I will say this, the superintendent published the findings of the Tech Task Force recommendations. And I know many in the tech community, including carriers, have seen that. And I brought many relationships with technology providers to ADE, and I've shared that with them, and people have proactively reached out. And if they have questions, happy to answer them. And if you know someone that wants more, happy to forward what the superintendent made public as well. This document is meant for public consumption. Technically, it's been shared with a number of superintendents around there. So hopefully that helps, Joy.
So Chris, just to pick up, and I know that you have some of our people, I'm not sure who's online today, but I know you have some of the folks participating in our task force who are also participating in your task force. But again, there are a number of nonprofit organizations out there who are providing devices, who are helping with connectivity, who are dealing with a lot of these issues. And so, again, part of our interest is we don't want to recreate the wheel. When we started the task force, we said we don't want to compete with other people are doing. We need to know what people are doing, helping to build collaboration and to look at where their gaps are. So I think there's a lot of organizations out there that need to partner with you, particularly in addressing some of the needs to the home.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of, Mylan shared that this group exists, and you might have seen me attend one or two. I've been reading the minutes, so I know what's going on. Sophia kind of brings some stuff to us as well, but it's great to know that you're kind of looking statewide. We can help represent at least our purview of building this office statewide from the K-12 perspective. And I think by layering in where our Venn diagrams, meet, we can do great things. So looking forward to staying engaged.
Sounds great, Chris, and I know you got to run.
Can probably take one, maybe two last questions before we drop.
Going once.
So this is Sharika. So is it okay to email you to see where we can fit to help out with this? Because as Steve was saying, I'm with a nonprofit that does STEM education and provide devices within the community in the schools. So, and I was listening to it, but I was like, I don't know if I fit in any of this so far.
Yeah, happy to send us some information, share what ideas you may have, and we'll see. I mean, we're not being prescriptive right now. We don't, Karina and I, we don't have all the answers. We just know it's time to engage, get the word out, and we'll kind of let the opportunity assessment steer us where we're going to focus. But in the process, if folks have great ideas and or already momentum, as Steve mentions, happy to tap into the success that's already there. And if it does fit, happy to share that back with the community we build.
So Chris, people who may be interested in getting involved, should they be contacting you or Karina or both, or how, and or Mylan or Sophia? Where's the best place to contact folks? Because I know you're really swamped.
I mean, whoever you feel most comfortable with. I mean, Sophia, Mylan, they will get the information to us if it's meant for the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. But if you know it's there, feel free to reach out to Karina and I. We're happy to receive whatever ideas you have.
Okay.
Hi, Chris. Kirk Bush here. How are you? I have a quick question. As you're competing and filling out these IT staff openings, how is that, and what is that like? You mentioned the California situation in competing for that IT talent. Is the relationship with ASU help some of those recent college grads? Could you talk about just, staffing and how you're going to ramp this up, kind of like the amazing work you've done at ASU already?
Well, I mean, we actually had a pretty good response to our first posting. I was pleasantly surprised. I think there were 15 candidates. We had, a decent group to select from. I was giving a specific example that we'd heard around a service channel. It's hard to get, there's a lot of movement, especially at the individual contributor level with IT being so hot right now. But internally at ADE, we had an offsite talking on our own strategy about how we retain folks and what we do with, we have a high contractor ratio, and do we get some students as interns? So I think the specific example I gave is some of the challenges that are happening at K-12 schools. The smaller school they are, the harder it is to have a large IT staff. And without a large IT staff, you don't have a lot of redundancy and resources. And if you lose a key support individual because they can get 20% increase in their salary, they're going to take it. And then you have this huge hole. And what they do is they spent a year and a half to train the person, and now they're someone else's benefit. And that's more what we mentioned. It just indicates there's likely a service channel potentiality to give scale of great support and great tools like security operations or ransomware protection. Those types of things resonate well, I think, because they're hard to staff and maintain.
Chris, what relationship do you have and or the department with the Arizona Technology Council? There's lots of folks, while they may not have CIO experience with schools, but there are a lot of talented people with cybersecurity. Kirk and Mark Goldstein and others who are on this call are very engaged with them. But they have a job board and other ways to connect with a lot of talented folks here in the state.
Yeah, I've known Mark and Steven Zylstra for quite some time. Kirk leads the IoT committee, and I've been a member of the IoT committee there, and I speak on smart cities at a lot of the events. The Tech Council's tie-in to ADE has not been through me. It's been more through there's some like unique announcements recently. So there's definitely a tie there, and happy to plug in this Office of Digital Teaching and Learning if we need, where it makes sense. But that's a good idea. Okay, well, hey, Stephen, appreciate you giving Karina and I the opportunity to come, and sorry we couldn't stay on for the kibitzing. It looks like there's a lot more interest, so feel free to reach out if any of you have questions, but appreciate the time.
Great, Chris, thanks for your time. Karina, thank you, and let's connect and talk about it, and need to get you on our list of announcements for the meetings and all that kind of good stuff.
Great.
We really do, Chris, we really do appreciate your leadership in this space. We really, really do. The state needs it, and thank you for stepping up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kurt. All right, bye all.
Okay, any other quick announcements before we officially end the meeting and then go into kibitzing for anybody who wants to kibitz? Just a reminder that the Arizona Technology Council is having their Business and Technology Expo coming up on the 6th. I guess that's Wednesday down here in Tucson. If past years are any example, they'll have 400 or 500 people who will be participating, including presentations and then an expo and so forth. So if you want to know what's happening, not only here in Southern Arizona, but also in Tucson, in the state, it's a good opportunity to make some connections. So the one thing, Robert, you're still not online, is that correct? So, so just quickly, many of us who were on this call have been participating with Chicanos por la Causa in developing an EDA grant focused on Southern Arizona. We will be asking many of you for letters of support. We'll get information to you about that grant, what we're planning to do, and so forth. The first phase of that project has to be in by the 19th of this month. And that is the first phase is to get a request for a planning grant with the final implementation in 2022. So any of you who have been participating on that call, Henry, Mala, and any of you who want to add anything more to that at this point?
Just that we are focusing on the south of Arizona, counties like Santa Cruz, Cochise. Did we finally include Yuma as well?
I think so.
I think we
I
did.
think there's
Yeah,
still some
okay.
discussion about that, but I think we're planning to include Yuma.
Yeah, are they, I don't even know if they're having a meeting today because I haven't received.
No, we're not. We're not having a meeting today. The next meeting is Thursday. I received a message from them, and you should to have received one too, Henry. If
Oh,
you
I
didn't,
see.
I'll forward it. Yeah, and focusing on economic development and what we can do to assist economic development. And this is just a planning grant. The implementation grant is the next level, provided we get the planning grant. So yeah, let's see where it goes. I'm excited because if we didn't take the step forward, it would be harder if we were applying directly for the implementation grant. But this gives us an opportunity to gather data, to look at projects that have been piloted so far, see what success we've had, see who the players are. So we are a step ahead when we get to doing an implementation grant.
So I want to just say we have a great team of people who are helping, and we've purposefully kept this a small team at this point. If we get too many people, it just gets to be unmanageable. But we will be contacting all of you, asking to be partners, to engage with us, to support the effort, to provide letters of support, and so forth. So you'll be getting communication from us fairly shortly, and would really appreciate it if you would take the time to provide letters of support and other ways that you might want to participate in the next phase of this project. So anyway, just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. It's a very exciting project. Again, those of you who don't know CPLC, the Chicanos por la Causa, they are an absolutely phenomenal and amazing organization, and we're very pleased. Robert has been participating whenever he can in this task force, and we really appreciate their partnership. So with that, unless anybody has anything else, any other announcements? Going once, going twice? If not, thank you all. I'm going to stop recording, and those who want